Hey, welcome back, everyone. Today we're going deep, really deep with you all
Indeed.
into Arcane to unpack how this show tackles the big questions about innovation and progress. We're zeroing in on one groundbreaking invention, Hextech.
Okay.
Now, if you're not familiar, Hextech is this incredible fusion of magic and technology
Right.
that has the power to, like, reshape their whole society.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
Arcane makes us wonder, is all this progress actually a good thing?
Well, what's so fascinating about Arcane, I think, is that it doesn't give us this simple yes or no answer.
Yeah.
Instead, through this invention of Hextech, the show really makes us grapple with those complexities
Right.
and the potential consequences that could come with any radical innovation.
Okay, so let's break that down.
Okay.
On the one hand, you've got things like hex gates. Imagine these portals that can transport you anywhere in an instant. Game changer, right? But then the question becomes, who controls this incredible power?
Yeah.
And what happens to the people who are left behind in this race for progress?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
The show doesn't really shy away from those ethical dilemmas
Right.
that arise from this kind of power.
Yeah.
Like, take Jason Victor, for example. They're both brilliant minds behind Hextech,
Yeah.
but they have completely different views
Right.
on its purpose and how far they're willing to
They'll
go
get there.
to achieve those goals.
It's like that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Jace, he starts out wanting to use Hextech for good,
Right.
to protect Piltover, even to honor his mentor's legacy.
Yeah.
But Victor, he's got his own struggles with, mortality.
Uh-huh.
And he sees Hextech as the answer to overcoming those limitations,
Wow.
even if he has to push those ethical boundaries.
And that tension is perfectly captured in the creation of HexCore.
Okay.
This self-evolving technology
Yeah.
that's both awe-inspiring and terrifying. It raises those big questions.
Yeah.
Can we control something that's constantly learning and changing?
Right.
And what are the risks involved in pursuing, such a powerful innovation?
It's like opening Pandora's box.
Yeah.
Once you unleash this kind of power, you can't really put it back, can you?
Right.
And then there's the whole issue of how progress can actually create more division. Look at Piltover and Zon.
Okay.
You've got Piltover, this shining city of progress, thriving thanks to Hextech.
Uh-huh.
But then right beneath it, you have Zon struggling with pollution, poverty,
Right.
and this growing resentment. It's
Yeah.
like they're literally living in two different worlds, even though they're so close together.
And what's crucial here, I think, is that Arcane doesn't just present this as a simple case of good versus evil.
Right.
It digs deeper into how that control of Hextech production in Piltover actually actively excludes Zon.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like how those real-world tech monopolies can actually worsen that inequality. The show's holding up a mirror to our own world and making us ask, are we creating a future that works for everyone?
Yeah.
Or are we just widening that gap between the haves and the have-nots?
It's definitely making me think about how innovation plays out in our world, but it's not just about the societal impact, is it?
Right.
Arcane also dives into those personal journeys of the characters who
Yeah.
are really at the heart of this whole technological revolution.
Uh-huh.
Take Jace, for example.
Okay.
He's trying to live up to his mentor's ideals.
Right.
He's navigating this complex political landscape in Piltover,
Yeah.
all while trying to use Hextech for good. Talk about pressure.
Right. And then you have Victor,
Yeah.
who's driven by this incredible desire to overcome his physical limitations and find his purpose. For him, progress is deeply personal.
Right.
And then there's Mel Medarda, who sees Hextech as a tool
Yeah.
for gaining political influence
Okay.
and shaping the world according to her vision.
Right.
Each of their stories
Yeah.
really adds a layer of complexity to this
Yeah.
idea of innovation,
Right.
showing us how it can be intertwined with personal ambitions, fears, even desperation.
It's a good reminder that behind every groundbreaking invention,
Yeah.
there's a human story, often with messy complications and even contradictions.
Right?
But Arcane doesn't shy away from the dark side of progress either, does it?
No, not at all.
There's always that potential for innovation to go unchecked,
Right.
to become something dangerous, makes
Yeah.
you ask. Who do we trust with this kind of power?
Yeah.
And can we even create safeguards that are strong enough to prevent its misuse?
Right. And speaking of misuse,
Yeah.
let's talk about Silco and his creation, Shimmer.
Okay.
This potent, addictive purple substance that gives people enhanced strength, but at a terrible cost.
Right.
It's like this dark mirror to Hextech, promising power, but ultimately corrupting and destroying those who become dependent on it.
Silco's exploitation of Shimmer is such a powerful cautionary tale.
It is.
It really highlights those ethical costs of unchecked progress.
Yeah.
Especially when it's in the wrong hands.
Right.
We see how innovation can be used to control and exploit people, leading to, devastating consequences.
Yeah. It's a stark reminder that progress isn't always shiny and utopian.
Right.
There can be a very dark side to it.
Yeah.
And Arcane definitely doesn't sugarcoat that.
Not at all.
What's so clever, I think, is that Arcane uses this contrast between Hextech and Shimmer to show us how innovation can have, like, two sides.
Okay.
It has the power to unite people.
Yeah.
Divide them.
Right.
Uplift and oppress, heal and harm. It's this double-edged sword.
Right.
And the consequences are rarely straightforward.
Makes you wonder, if you were in Jace's shoes,
Yeah.
how would you even begin to navigate those ethical gray areas? Would you prioritize the potential benefits of Hextech?
Right.
Even if it meant taking risks? That could backfire spectacularly.
That's the question. That really haunts both Jace and Victor throughout the series.
Right.
Jace, he starts out with this idealistic vision, convinced that Hextech can solve, all of Piltover's problems. But he quickly learns that progress always comes at a cost.
Yeah.
And even the best intentions can lead to unintended, even disastrous consequences.
It's like, how do you balance that desire to make the world a better place with the responsibility of knowing that your creations could be used for harm?
Right.
It's a dilemma that's relevant to any kind of innovation, not just in a, fantasy world like Arcane.
And then you have Victor,
Yeah.
who is driven by, like, his own mortality.
Right.
And this, like, burning ambition to leave a lasting mark on the world. He becomes increasingly willing to push those ethical boundaries in pursuit of his goals, almost becoming a cautionary example of how the pursuit of progress can really consume a person.
It's fascinating how Arcane explores those, like, internal struggles.
Yeah.
It's like, even with all the dazzling potential of Hextech, it ultimately comes down to those choices that individuals make. And those choices can be shaped by all sorts of things.
Right.
Personal ambition,
Yeah.
fear, even desperation.
Exactly. And that's what makes Arcane so compelling. It doesn't shy away from showing us those complexities and contradictions of human nature.
Yeah.
Especially when we're faced with such, like, transformative power.
Okay, but here's something I'm wondering about.
Okay.
The show focuses a lot on Jace and Victor. But what about the people who are, like, impacted by their innovations?
Right.
How does Arcane explore their perspectives?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And that's where characters like Caitlin and Vi come in.
Okay.
Caitlin, she represents a more grounded perspective on progress. As a Piltover enforcer, she sees those potential dangers of unchecked innovation firsthand.
Yeah.
And Vi, although initially skeptical of Hextech,
Right.
eventually recognizes its potential to help those in need, especially in Zaun.
Right.
Her journey reflects a more pragmatic approach to progress.
Okay.
One that's really rooted in those realities of those who have been marginalized and forgotten.
So we're seeing how innovation plays out on, like, different levels.
Yeah.
From those, like, grand visionaries like Jace and Victor to the people on the ground who are dealing with the consequences, both good and bad.
Exactly. And there's another key character that we shouldn't forget. Heimerdinger.
Yeah.
He's the voice of wisdom and caution in the show.
Right.
Constantly reminding everyone of the importance of responsible innovation.
It's like he's the conscience of Piltover, always urging everyone to slow down and consider those long-term consequences of their actions. Which, let's be honest, is something we could all use a reminder of sometime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's easy to get swept up in the excitement of new possibilities. But we have to remember that progress, it isn't this guaranteed path to a better future.
Right.
It's a journey filled with tough decisions and ethical dilemmas.
Right.
And we all have a role to play in shaping the outcome.
It's making me think about how sometimes those who are closest to the innovation, like Jace and Victor, can be blinded by its potential.
Right.
While those on the periphery, like Caitlin and Heimerdinger, might actually see the bigger picture.
Like they have that
Crucial distance.
Crucial distance.
Yeah.
Which allows them to see those potential pitfalls that the innovators themselves might miss.
Which brings us to a question that's relevant to all of us.
Okay.
How do we balance the potential benefits of innovation with that responsibility of ensuring that it doesn't cause harm?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
Yes.
Especially in a world where technology is evolving at such a rapid pace.
Right.
It can be hard to keep up.
Yeah.
Let alone understand the full implications of these advancements.
But shows like Arcane, they give us this opportunity to pause and really reflect.
They do.
Right, to examine both the potential benefits and the potential pitfalls of this rapid progress, and to remember that at the end of the day, innovation is a human endeavor, right? Shaped by our choices, our values, and our aspirations.
Exactly. And those choices have consequences. Sometimes on a grand scale.
Right.
That's why it's so important to have these conversations, to talk about those ethical implications, the social impact, the potential consequences of those technologies that we're creating.
Because if we're not careful, progress can become a force that divides us rather than unites us.
Absolutely.
Right? It can worsen those existing inequalities and even create new ones.
And that brings us back to that, core question that Arcane keeps coming back to. What is the true cost of progress?
Right.
And are we willing to pay it?
So after exploring all these different facets of innovation in Arcane, from those dazzling possibilities of Hextech to those devastating consequences of Shimmer, where does that leave us? Is all progress good progress?
Right.
Or is it more complicated than that?
I think Arcane is telling us that progress isn't inherently good or bad.
Okay.
It's a force.
Yeah.
A catalyst for change.
Right.
And it's ultimately up to us to decide how we harness that force, how we shape that change.
So it's not about rejecting progress altogether, but about being mindful, being responsible, and making sure that it truly benefits humanity, not the other way around.
Exactly. And that's a message that resonates far beyond, that fictional world of Piltover and Zon.
Right.
It's relevant to all of us who are living in this era of unprecedented technological advancement.
It's like Arcane is giving us this blueprint, not just for understanding the complexities of progress, but also for thinking critically about the role we each play in shaping the future. But we've only scratched the surface of this deep dive.
Yes.
There's so much more to uncover.
There is. We've talked about those, big players in Arcane's world of innovation. But there are other perspectives to consider, other stories that really shed light on how progress impacts individuals in very different ways.
Right.
And that's what we'll be exploring as we continue this deep dive. Thinking about the impact of Hextech and Arcane reminds me of something in our own world. It's like when the internet first, took off.
Right.
It promised this amazing connectivity, access to information, a whole new way of living and working.
Yeah.
But did everyone benefit equally?
Right.
Are we all living in, the same digital world?
That's a great point. It's like we all have access to this, incredible technology.
Right.
But those benefits and opportunities aren't always distributed fairly, are they? And that's not even taking into account the negative consequences, the spread of misinformation and the erosion of privacy.
Exactly. And that's something that Arcane tackles head on. It's not just about that shiny utopian potential of innovation, but also about those unintended consequences, those dark underbelly of progress.
So let's get back to some of those other characters that you mentioned.
Okay.
You were talking about Caitlin and V, who offer different perspectives on Hextech and its impact.
Right.
What makes their story so compelling?
Well, with Caitlin, we see the perspective of someone who's trying to maintain order and justice in this rapidly changing world. She's not a scientist or an inventor.
Yeah.
She's a law enforcer who sees firsthand how Hextech can be both a tool for good and a weapon for, chaos.
Right.
She's constantly grappling with those ethical gray areas of using this technology to uphold the law, especially in a city where those lines between progress and danger are so, blurred.
Right. And she's caught between those two worlds, the gleaming towers of Piltover, where Hextech is seen as a symbol of progress, and the undercity of Zon, where that same technology is often seen as a threat, a reminder of the inequality that divides them.
And that's where V's perspective becomes so crucial.
Yeah.
She's from Zon.
Right.
So she's experienced that darker side of progress firsthand.
Yeah.
She's seen how Hextech can be used to exploit and control people, how it can exacerbate those existing inequalities.
I'm remembering that scene where Vi confronts a Piltover enforcer who's using Hextech-powered restraints on a group of Zonites. It's a powerful moment because it shows how even those seemingly benign applications of technology can be used to reinforce those existing power structures and oppression.
Exactly. And Vi's initial skepticism towards Hextech is completely understandable, given her experiences.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that she doesn't just reject it outright. As the story unfolds, she begins to see how it could be used to help the people of Zon.
Right.
To fight back against the forces that have been, oppressing them.
So she's like a bridge between those two worlds, right? She understands both the potential and the dangers of Hextech, and she's trying to find a way to use it for good, to empower those who have been left behind.
Precisely. And that's what makes her such a compelling character.
Yeah.
She's not blinded by idealism or driven by ambition. She's really grounded in those realities of those who are struggling to survive. And she's determined to use whatever means necessary to protect them.
It's like with Vi, we see how innovation can be a tool for resistance, for fighting back against injustice. And that's a really powerful message.
It is.
Especially in a world where technology is often seen as being controlled by those in power.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that progress, it isn't just about technological advancements, it's also about social change.
Yeah.
About using those advancements to create a more just and equitable world.
Okay, but it's not always easy to know how to use technology for good, is it?
Right.
I mean, even with the best intentions, things can go wrong. And Arcane definitely doesn't shy away from showing us those unintended consequences.
No.
Those cautionary tales of progress gone awry.
Right, and that's where those smaller, seemingly insignificant innovations can have a surprisingly big impact.
Okay.
Think about Shimmer.
Right.
It starts out as this localized problem in Zon, a dangerous drug that's preying on the vulnerable, but it quickly spirals out of control, becoming a major feature in the power struggle between Piltover and Zon.
It's like you'd think something like Shimmer would be contained to the Undercity, but it ends up having these ripple effects that impact the entire region.
And that unpredictability is magnified when you're dealing with technology that blurs those lines between magic and science, like Hextech.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that we can't always control the forces we unleash, even with the best intentions.
It makes me think about those real-world parallels, like the development of nuclear weapons. It started as this scientific breakthrough, but it quickly became a source of terror and destruction.
Exactly.
The question of who do we trust with this power becomes even more crucial when you're dealing with something that has the potential to destroy entire civilizations. So how do we prevent those unintended consequences?
Right.
How do we make sure that progress serves humanity and doesn't end up destroying us?
Well, Arcane doesn't offer easy answers.
Yeah.
But it does give us a few potential paths forward.
Like what? At all ears.
One path is through collaboration and understanding. The show highlights the importance of bridging that divide between Piltover and Zon, of fostering communication and cooperation between those who create technology and those who are, impacted by it.
It's like that saying, it takes a village, right? We can't just rely on a few brilliant minds to solve all our problems.
Right.
We need to bring those diverse perspectives to the table and work together to create solutions that benefit everyone.
And another important element is ethical awareness. Arcane emphasizes the need for individuals to really wrestle with the moral implications of their actions.
Okay.
To consider the potential consequences of their creations.
It's like you can't just blindly pursue progress without thinking about those potential costs, right? You have to be willing to ask those tough questions and make those difficult choices, even if it means slowing down or changing course.
Exactly. And that's where the role of mentors and guides becomes so crucial. In Arcane, we see how characters like Heimerdinger and Professor Singed, despite their flaws, try to instill a sense of responsibility in their students.
Yeah.
They represent that importance of passing down wisdom, of reminding the next generation that progress must be tempered with caution and, like, ethical awareness.
But it's not just about individual responsibility, is it?
No, it's not.
There's also a, like, systemic element to all of this. Arcane shows us how those, like, institutions and power structures can either promote or hinder, responsible innovation.
Right. We see how Piltover's council, with its focus on, like, control, maintaining its own power, can actually stifle progress and exacerbate those tensions with Zon.
Right.
And we see how Silco's criminal empire, driven by greed and a, lust for power, exploits innovation for its own nefarious purposes.
So it's like we need to create systems and structures that encourage, ethical innovation, that promote collaboration and transparency, and that prioritize the, like, well-being of everyone, not just the select few.
Exactly. And that requires us to think beyond those, like, technological solutions. We need to address the underlying, social and political factors that shape how innovation is developed and deployed.
This is getting me thinking about all the ways that technology is being used in our own world, for better or for worse. Like, think about artificial intelligence. It has the potential to, revolutionize so many aspects of our lives. But there are also those concerns about job displacement, algorithmic bias, even the potential for, like, autonomous weapon systems.
And those are the kinds of conversations that Arcane is prompting us to have. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about how we use it, who benefits from it, and who might be harmed by it.
Okay, so we've talked about those ethical challenges of innovation, the potential for unintended consequences, the need for collaboration, ethical awareness. But what about the, like, personal stories? Those individual journeys that unfold amidst all this technological upheaval? That's something Arcane does so well, right?
It does. It shows us how innovation can impact people on this, like, deeply personal level.
So whose story should we, like, dive into next?
Let's talk about Victor.
Okay.
His journey is particularly fascinating because it speaks to that deep human desire to overcome our, like, limitations to transcend our mortality.
All right, let's unpack Victor's story and see what insights it offers about that complex relationship between innovation and the human condition. All right, so we're picking up with Victor's story. Remind me, what makes his journey in Arcane so relevant to this whole discussion about progress?
Well, Victor, he embodies this deep human desire to overcome, our limitations. He was born with this physical disability, and he's always struggled to keep up, to prove his worth. And he really sees science and innovation as his way to, like, transcend those limitations, to leave this lasting impact on the world.
It's like, for Victor, progress isn't just this, like, abstract idea. It's deeply personal.
It is.
It's about survival purpose, proving that he's more than just his, physical limitations.
Exactly. And that drive, that ambition, it fuels those incredible scientific breakthroughs. Like, he becomes obsessed with this idea of using Hextech to augment human potential. To create a future where people like him don't have to suffer. He's trying to push the boundaries of what's possible to create this world where, limitations no longer exist.
But that kind of ambition can be like a double-edged sword, right?
It can.
We see how Victor's pursuit of progress becomes, like, all-consuming, how it starts to, blur those ethical lines. He begins to see people as, like, obstacles in his path, as means to an end.
Yes, and that's where his story becomes this, like, cautionary tale. It shows how that pursuit of progress, even with noble intentions, can lead to this dangerous detachment from our own humanity. Victor's so focused on that end goal, on achieving this utopian vision, that he loses sight of those individuals who are, impacted along the way.
It's like he's blinded by his own brilliance, his own conviction that he knows what's best for everyone. But he forgets that progress isn't just about, like, technological advancement. It's about people. It's about values. It's about compassion.
And that's what makes his downfall so tragic. He starts out wanting to help people, to alleviate suffering. But in his pursuit of that goal, he becomes the very thing he was trying to fight against,
Right.
this force of destruction and pain.
It's like a classic Greek tragedy, right?
Yeah.
Hubris leading to downfall.
Mm.
It reminds us that even those like most brilliant minds, the most well-intentioned innovators, can fall prey to their own ambition and lose sight of the like human cost of progress.
And it brings us back to that like fundamental question we keep coming back to.
Yeah.
How do we ensure that progress serves humanity?
You're right.
And not the other way around?
Right.
How do we keep our own ambitions in check, maintain our ethical compass, even when we're, dazzled by those possibilities of innovation?
It's like we need to develop this like ethical muscle memory, right? This way of constantly checking ourselves, asking what are the potential consequences of this? Who might be harmed? Are my own biases, clouding my judgment?
Exactly. And that's something that we can all do, whether we're, scientists, engineers, artists, or just everyday citizens navigating this like rapidly changing world.
Right.
We need to cultivate that, critical awareness, that ability to step back and question those narratives that we're being told about progress.
Because progress isn't this inevitable force of good, right? It's a tool.
Right.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for evil. It all depends on the hands that wield it.
Right.
The choices we make, the values we prioritize.
And that's where Arcane, I think, offers a glimmer of hope.
Okay.
Even amidst all the, darkness, all those cautionary tales, there were those characters who embody a more responsible, a more compassionate approach to progress.
Like who? Give me some examples.
Well, we've already talked about Caitlin and Via, who represent this more grounded, more people-centered approach to innovation. But there's also Heimerdinger, who embodies that like wisdom of the ages, that cautionary voice that reminds us to proceed with care, to consider those long-term consequences of our actions.
He's like that, wise old mentor who's seen it all, right? He understands that progress isn't this race to the finish line.
Right.
It's a journey that requires patience, humility, and this deep respect for the interconnectedness of all things.
Exactly. And that's a perspective that's often missing in our own world, where we're bombarded with these messages about disruption, innovation, the need to move fast and break things.
It's like we've lost sight of that, like, ancient wisdom, that understanding that true progress isn't just about, like, technological advancement. It's about, like, social evolution. It's about becoming more humane, more compassionate, more connected to each other and to, the world around us.
And that brings us back to that, like, core message of Arcane, I think.
Okay.
It's not just this story about those wonders and dangers of technology. It's a story about us, about our choices, our values, and the kind of future we want to create.
So as we like wrap up this deep dive into Arcane, I want to come back to that question we posed at the beginning. Is all progress good progress?
Right.
What's the answer?
I think the answer is, like, it's up to us. Progress is neither inherently good nor bad.
Okay.
It's a force.
A
potential, a set of tools that we can use to shape the world.
Right.
The question is, will we use those tools wisely? Will we prioritize compassion, collaboration, and a deep understanding of that, like interconnectedness of all things?
It's a lot to think about, right?
It is.
But that's the power of stories like Arcane. They challenge us to, confront these big questions, to engage in these critical conversations, and to ultimately take responsibility for the kind of future we want to create.
And it's not just about, grand world-altering innovations. It's about the choices we make every day, the technologies we embrace, the values we uphold.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder.
Okay.
If you had the power to, like, influence the direction of innovation, what would you do differently? What values would you prioritize? How would you ensure that progress benefits everyone, not just a select few?
Those are the questions we need to keep asking ourselves to keep those conversations going. Because the future is not, predetermined. It's something we create together through our choices and our actions.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into Arcane. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Yes, thanks everyone.
We hope this has sparked some new ideas
Yeah.
and inspired you to think critically about the role of innovation in your own life and in the world around you.